Good evening, councillors, also officers of staff and those streaming us, and also present in the gallery as well. Welcome to the Wodonga Council meeting for the 21st of Feb 2022. I think I got the nods right from back in the chamber that we are streaming now and are correct to go. I'll start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land on which we are meeting and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, also to those from other communities who are here with us today, for they hold the memories, the tradition and also the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Councillors, item number 3 is apologies and requests for leave of absence. Do we have any of those? Councillor Watson, you've got one.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd put in for a request of leave of absence just for a short period of the 12th of March to 22nd of March, depending on how COVID goes.
Thanks very much, Councillor Watson. Other councillors? No, thank you. Item 4 is declaration of acts, regulations, codes or local laws. Acting CEO, I believe. Obviously, we've got a couple of late papers to add that you can introduce now.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Sorry, your microphone's just jumped off there, Acting CEO.
Sorry.
Thank you.
With the agreement of the Council, it is proposed to introduce 2 late items of urgent business: the request for quote for independent professional advisor and a request for quote for a recruitment agency for the CEO. And these are to be numbered in the agenda as item 8.8 and 8.9. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Acting CEO. There's a recommendation, councillors, that 2 late items of urgent business as described be included at 8.8, 8.9. Do I have somebody move to accept those? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Seconder, Councillor Bennett. Does anybody wish to speak against? No, thank you. So we'll see them in due course. Item 5, the declaration by councillors of any conflicts of interest. I'm not aware of any councillors. Is there anything that's changed in the course of the afternoon? No, we're all good. Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting at item 6, that the meeting held on December 13th and also then the 31st of January, to have met since then. They're circulated. I'm just looking for someone to move. They are correct. Have I got a mover? Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer. I'll take Councillor Watson as the seconder. And does anyone wish to speak against the 2 lots of minutes? Carried unanimously. Item 7 is the delegates' reports, of which there are none, into items for decision, councillors. 8.1 is the Wodonga Solar lease variations. The public consultation has been completed on that, certainly not a new concept to councillors. There's a recommendation, councillors, on page 5 of 262 of your agenda. Would somebody like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Bennett, as per recommendation. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett.
So this is just the Wodonga Solar out at Logic. Back in I think it was the October meeting, we went out for public notice around this one about varying their lease. So they approached council and said the current arrangement wasn't viable for them. So we went out on public notice. We didn't receive any submissions for that. So the current lease is 4.85 plus CPI. The new proposed lease is CPI. So I think we should go with this one and act in good business faith with Wodonga Solar, who have already, invested quite a bit of money. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson.
Mr Mayor, I'll reserve my right if required.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, reserving right. Councillors? Councillor Hall.
I haven't much to add. I support the recommendation in principle. It's been through council before. Although, of late, I'm with the view that maybe the very least should come back to council to be signed off on, rather than authorising the CEO. There's no detriment to the CEO or anything, but it's just, I think, as council, a few things have come up in the past, and I think probably council probably need to have a look at the variation and then tick off on it before it goes forward. That's my view anyway.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Any other councillors? Councillor Watson, you reserved your right.
Mr Mayor, I think it's very important that we keep this item moving along and have all the best faith in our acting CEO and the staff to come back with the variation lease.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett, in closing. Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.2 is the Osburn Street closure. The consultation results, obviously that one's been out to public. Report is pretty self-explanatory, councillors. There is a recommendation, but I will look for a motion. The recommendation is on page 11 of 262. Would somebody like to move a motion? Councillor Hall. As per the recommendation, Councillor Hall, have you got something different?
No, I just want to add something to the recommendation.
Okay, yes.
So I'll read out. So it's as per the motion. So it's proceed with the road closure in accordance with Clause 9 of the Schedule 11 of the Local Government Act, 1989, subject to A, the ceasing of operation of the Aussie Car Wash at 5153 High Street. B, vehicle, this is what I've added, which is Clause B, vehicle access and egress being retained from Osburn Street car park. C, the council entering into an agreement with the school in relation to the use of the land and ongoing maintenance obligations. And 2, the submitter be advised of the council decision and the reasons for it as described in the officer report.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. And councillors, obviously there's an extra pointer in there. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Mildren. Councillor Hall, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes. After considerations of the officer's report and the submissions received and heard by council, I'm with the view that Clause B, which I've inserted, is necessary for access to the church, especially on occasions when a funeral is being held at the church. Most funerals are held during the week. Access via High Street during the week is more difficult because of the heavier traffic conditions. And I believe because of this factor, safety would be an issue upon exiting the church grounds. To allow access from existing car park is the safest way to deal with this issue. Modifying the proposed closure of the road car park to allow for vehicle access doesn't, I believe, infringe too much on the overall merit of the request by the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mildren.
Reserve, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillors? Councillor Watson, and then, sorry, Councillor Bennett, I'll come back to you.
Mr Mayor, just a question probably through to either Officer Schultz or to Councillor Hall. Does it change the actual, what you're putting in your motion, does it change the actual remediation, I suppose, of how the concept plan we saw in the report that they were going to grass, just enclose that a little bit? So that would be my question probably to Officer Schultz.
Councillor, following the submission that was made to the councillors some weeks ago now, we did put the question to the principal of the school, asking whether there may be consideration of moving the boundary, as it were, back to allow the access as proposed by Councillor Hall. It's fair to say that there wasn't a lot of support at the time for that change to be made, and it was preferred to stay as per the original council report and as set out in the sketch in this particular report back to the councillors. I can't speak on behalf of the principal to say that the change will or won't be accepted, and that may or may not walk away, but at the end of the day, there's a recommendation or an amendment to the motion put by Councillor Hall.
Can I reply to that?
Thanks, Councillor Watson. Thanks, Officer Schultz. Councillor Hall, did you have something further to add to clarify Councillor Watson's question?
Look, I believe there's a way of doing it with the existing diagram that's been that was submitted, and doing it in a way that could still incorporate the grass area, but incorporating a access ability for. And it would only be on, you know, some days. You know, there's not a lot of funerals, but funerals do happen during the week. They don't generally happen on weekend, and that is a bit of a cause for people that want to, you know, exit the church on safely, especially with these elderly people and what have you. So I believe it can be done.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Councillor Watson, you have the question. Did you want to speak for or against the motion at all before I go to Councillor Bennett?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, with the late change, which we would have, you know, would have been nice to have it a bit earlier, so we could discuss it. But hopefully, if the motion is successful, we can still negotiate with the school principal and the school, and I suppose it's school council plus the church parish, that we can come to the best arrangement for the community.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett.
Sure. So first of all, I'll address that addition that Councillor Hall put in, which I don't support. I think the intent behind this item is to improve child safety. So again, having that, you know, having traffic go in and out there again goes against that, the whole intent of why this is. Having been at that school, that was my primary school, you know, every time you cross the road, you have to go get a teacher, and then that takes a teacher away from all the rest of the kids to do that. So I completely understand why this is coming to us. And for me, the biggest weight I'm putting on this is child safety. This report is a really good report. So it goes into detail about the different when they went out for consultation, the fors and the against, and addresses the issues that came up. So I'm just going to go through a few of them. One of the arguments against this that was cited is that it would mean that pedestrians and bikes couldn't use that space. So no, that won't be the case. Pedestrians and cyclists can still use that space. In fact, I would argue that it would be much more nicer to walk or ride down Osburn Street in this section when it is landscaped, and also obviously having it landscaped will certainly help with the heat island effect. Another clarifier is the school actually made this application, as it says in this report, with the parish. So the parish have determined that they don't need access off Osburn Street. It's not required for the operation of their church. So the parish is in support of this, which was one of my questions after the submission that we had at our last council meeting. Another concern was around parking, but as it outlines in the report, there's actually quite a lot of underutilised car parking around there. Another factor was, and this won't come into effect until the Aussie Car Wash actually ceases that business, so it won't impact them. So for me, after reading this report, still the biggest weight I put on this is community safety, and the safety of kids is the most significant. The parish supports this. The issues that people who were against it raised have all been addressed really clearly in this report. So I think great report, and I'm happy to support the recommendation that is in our agenda, not with that the addition that Councillor Hall added.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. And just for clarity, are you foreshadowing, should this motion not succeed, that you'd like to put the recommendation forward as a motion?
Yep.
Thank you. Councillors, Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for providing your opinion, and thank you to Councillor Hall for providing an alternative motion. To tell you the truth, coming to this meeting, I still did not know how I was going to vote. I must say the safety of the children is, of course, paramount to me, and I think the other councillors will agree. Most of us are proud owners of small children or grandchildren, so this sentiment is very close to our hearts. What worried me in what we had in the report in front of us and the submissions and information surrounding it is, firstly, the service station, the car wash facing Osburn Street, the recommendation is pending its closure. However, it's not closed yet, and that's not a decisive factor in me supporting or not supporting. However, I really prefer the situations where things are set in stone, not pending this or that, and things can go either way. And the second point I'm slightly worried about, and would love to have resolved in the process of today's debate, is the conflict of interest groups. I acknowledge Councillor Bennett has just mentioned that there was a piece of information in the report that the submission was made together with the parish, and therefore the issue of funeral processions exiting the church grounds and other possible issues have been at least considered. However, I'm hoping that should we vote as per the recommendation, I'm hoping that it won't create any further conflicts between interest groups such as parents and friends, church, school, etc. So again, I thank you everybody for the debate, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the councillors who haven't spoken yet, so I could form my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Simpfendorfer, you're the only one that hasn't spoken yet. Did you have anything to add on this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I might have raised my hand as you look down.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. You got my audio okay. Just a question, whether it's through the CEO or others, with Councillor Hall's addition to point B, what impact will that be either on the planning or the fiscal aspects of Osborne Street if it was to get up? And has there been any discussion with the school around this point? I think that was already answered by Councillor Bennett's comments, though. So, sorry, correction. So, two questions for the CEO. What impacts will this addition be either through the planning or the fiscal part of the point B from Councillor Hall?
Through you. Am I on now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can ask Officer Schultz to comment, since he has had conversations with the school, or his staff have. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll answer Councillor Simpfendorfer's second question first. And that is, it certainly wasn't the preferred option when that option was put to the school principal by one of our staff members. Going back to the first question, I wouldn't want to speculate on a range of planning or impacts that the change may have, but I think Councillor Bennett has made the point that it will still allow vehicles to traverse the area in and out of the, let's call it the safe zone for the children of the school, albeit on an infrequent, hopefully on an infrequent basis. There will still be traffic that will be moving through that area out of the churchyard on funeral occasions. But as I said earlier, it wasn't the preferred option from the school when they made the request to us, or when we asked them that question post the councillor submission process.
Thank you, Officer Schultz. Councillor Simpfendorfer, you had questions. Did you want to speak for or against, or you're all right? Councillor Mildren, you'd reserved your right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I sort of basically led to when this matter was brought up for put out for public notice, I expressed a whole range of things that I didn't feel comfortable with, and conflicts in my own observation. And I absolutely see the long-term and the bigger picture reasons why the area be essentially closed to ongoing car parking and traffic that of a nature that would be every day, any time of the day, etc. I understand that for the safety and so on of the students at the school. I also understand, and contrary to some of the things that are probably being intimated, I think access and egress via the ramp out onto High Street, particularly during normal weekday activities, but even at weekends, because of the high retaining wall that comes back up into along the ramp and the very close proximity to the traffic lights, I think it's fraught with equally as much risk to the public and to patrons of the church as what would be if there was some sort of, or if the car park and everything was left in Osburn Street. So I see both sides of that conversation. Now, in respect to the events that the church has that might be held during school times, they're fundamentally going to be funerals. When they do have them now, the students aren't allowed across in that part of the church yards anyway. And in the past, generally speaking, frail people that have frail people in the car with them have been allowed to park up in that area and been allowed to drive off, and everybody else has been out on the street. So really, the only people that park up there is the formal funeral vehicles or vehicle, and maybe a few people that are frail or disabled. To provide an access that is only accessible when those grounds are closed in any event, because the students are kept away when there's an event on in the church, and that's been the case for as long as I've had anything to do with this part of Wodonga, then there is no impact. And if they're only using, for example, we haven't even spoken about what the design matters could be, but we could use grass paving, the paving that has the grass growing through it, that for all intents and purposes looks like grass, but is actually paving that can be used, 2 or 3 or 4 times a week, or whatever the case is, that funerals and events happen at the church. Because the students from the school are not going to be there at that time. It's just how the system has functioned. So I think this is a good compromise. It keeps the safety out of the implications on High Street, and it's not impacting on the safety of the kids, and it is providing fundamentally what the church is seeking to achieve with the green space for the school and everything else, and the access to get across. All that stuff will be achieved. If this, I think, summing things across, I think if Councillor Hall hadn't introduced her additional part, I probably would have voted against this on the balance of safety and so on. I'm prepared to vote in favour of this and hence seconded the motion, because I think it's the best compromise all round. I think it's the best result we'll get with all these competing, conflicting interests. And I think we should go with it. That's why I support the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Hall, in closing.
Look, I haven't got much to add, but the fact it does say in the report that the church, it says here, the church only operates services for mass baptisms and funerals on weekends. Well, most funerals I know of are always during the week. I don't know of very, very few that would be on a weekend. And as I said, there's generally, I think with that church being, as Mr McGrath sort of mentioned, that a lot of the older people of Wodonga because quite often a lot of the funerals are through the other Catholic church in Beechworth Road, that generally a lot of the, the older community members prefer that churches because it's the church that they originally went to. And I mean, I think we've got a duty of care to look after their safety needs as well. And as I said, during the week, it is fairly difficult if you drive past there, if you know, as Councillor Mildred mentioned, that if the lights are there and it's a difficult to access ability to get onto High Street when the traffic's pretty thick. So it's all it is. It won't impinge on the safety of the children, and it can be done in a way that it can be user-friendly for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Motion was defeated. Councillors, I know Councillor Bennett, you were prepared to move a motion as per the recommendation. That's still the case. Yes. Do I have a seconder as per the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett.
No, look, I think everything's been said for me. Bottom line, this has been a issue around children and their safety for literally decades. I'm surprised this hasn't come up to us sooner. It's because of the closure with the car wash that they're finally able to do this. The parish is in support of this. Like, on the balance, it's kid safety that is the most important thing here. So that's just the number one thing.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson.
I think Councillor Bennett summed it up as the safety of the children. The children aren't aware of traffic as much as senior citizens, other users. So I think put the motion forward.
Councillors, anybody else wish to speak before I get Councillor Bennett to close? Councillor Hall.
There's no question about the safety for children, and that's the utmost on my mind. But I don't see that is an issue with the alternate motion. But I think it's the safety for everyone, if you ask me.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Councillor Mildred, I think you also raised your arm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have an obligation to consider the safety of everybody in all aspects. It's not just what happens with the children, although that's vitally important. I am really, really concerned that by increasing and facilitating an only access and egress that goes down that ramp into High Street is going to lead to a catastrophe. And I really hope it doesn't happen, but it worries me no end. I think we've been very short-sighted. I think we had a really good compromise outcome that would have solved pretty much most of the problems and issues that were raised and would not have been of detriment. So I think this, to do as this motion says, is increasing the level of risk associated with the location rather than solving problems and reducing risk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildred. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, to reiterate, safety of the children is probably my number one priority in whatever I do in life. However, we live in this society where safety of every individual, regardless of their age, is important. To bring in a slightly unrelated example, a lot of people chose to or considered vaccinating their kids with new vaccinations to protect the elderly and the frail and the sick people of their family, if for no other good reasons. Therefore, while we consider the safety of the children and hold it close to our hearts, I believe that in this particular case, every effort should be taken to achieve compromise and safety for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Simpfendorfer, anything to add? Thank you. Councillor Bennett in closing? No? Okay, therefore I put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Carried 4-3. Thank you, councillors. On to item 8.3, which is our Logic Land Sale, lots 1 and 2. Acting CEO Deb Mudra, I think you wanted to highlight something in this particular item, is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to put forward a change of wording in response to a question that Councillor Mildred raised. It refers to part 2 of the resolution. We followed up with Maddox, our legal firm, and they did acknowledge that we could remove the words heads of agreement and subsequent and move straight to the contract of sale. So in part 2, it would then read that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to enter into and execute the contract of sale on behalf of Council.
Thank you, Acting CEO, for that clarification. Councillors, that's obviously the officer recommendation there at the moment, and it has been out to public consultation. Would somebody like to move a motion? As per recommendation, Councillor Watson. Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Simpendorfer, as per. Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think we've been through this for some time, and it'd be great if we get this through with the authorisation through the Chief Executive Officer. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpendorfer.
I'll reserve the right, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Facilitating this sale is probably one of the most important things that we could do to ensure the continued growth of the rail freight facility at Logic. And from that point of view, this is vitally important, and we should be trying to make all this happen and make the development occur on the land for the purposes of, railway freight and logistics, etc. I'm increasingly becoming a little bit more concerned, or quite a bit more concerned, that we don't see the final negotiated contract of sale before it actually gets signed and sent off. And there's another item that appears in our confidential section tonight that is a good example where things have gone awry and we didn't see the documentation, didn't come back to council. In the circumstances of this case where it's been to public notice, and I think it's reasonably fixed as to what should finish up in the contract of sale, I think I'm probably prepared to support the motion, but it's only just. It's because of the importance of this to the freight and logistics at Logic that I'm probably doing this. I think we need to revisit how we go about dealing with these contracts and so on when we abrogate our responsibility and pass it across to the staff in circumstances where we don't see it again. I think we're leaving ourselves wide open to mistakes being made or to things being missed or omitted or whatever that the collective elected councillors may or may not pick up, but would have a better chance of picking up if the documents came back to us. For the purposes of this, I'm going to support the motion, but I raise that as an issue we need to deal with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Mildren. Other councillors? No, Councillor Simpendorfer, you reserved your right.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think I've reiterated a lot of what Councillor Mildren said. It's an important sale of land out at Logic, and the report very well details, I guess, the trajectory that we've been on to this point and the outcomes of that public exhibition that it went to. So it's a good outcome for the city, including the financial and the logistics viability of that area, and this particular sale also without, with the income that we'll receive from rates, and without any concessions. So that's a good point. In relation to that last point, I guess, the bit about Councillor Mildren saying about the contracts of sale, that'd be something I guess we can try and explore earlier, but it certainly won't be holding up my vote on this, and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer. Councillor Watson, in closing.
Mr. Mayor, thanks very much. I think it's important that we keep Logic going along. And I think the comments that Councillor Mildren said is like, not only, mistakes can be made by we as councillors as well, but more importantly, it does go through a legal process as well of a contract of sale. So I believe that it's a good thing for the city and particularly for the Logic development.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.4 is the December 2021 quarterly finance report. And I'm going to look to Councillor Quilty and see if she's prepared to move it as a member of our Audit and Risk Committee. Is that, you happy prepared to move that one, Councillor Quilty?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to move it as per the recommendation. I would like to speak to it.
I'll just get a seconder first, if that's all right,
Sure.
Councillor Quilty, then we'll come back and speak to it. So have we got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Quilty, away you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So today in front of us, we have the quarterly financial report addressing a number of things. It covers the period from 1st of October to 31st of October 2021, which is the second quarter of the current financial year. We will be looking at approving some budget variances based on the information from the second quarter of the financial year. There are a few big and small ticket items that I would like to address, and also I would like to receive comments on a few things that I believe there is value in commenting on in the public meeting. A few things that I believe that jumped at me. There is an operating grant revenue in our revenue of just over 1 million. A lot of it, most of it has been offset by the relevant expenses. For example, we received $500,000 of outdoor activation grant, which was then offset in the expense section by relevant expenses. Our expenses increased by 1.5 million, which was due to firstly, the expenses relevant to the grant I've just spoken about, and also our painful payment related to MAV work care scheme that I believe everybody has heard and spoken about. We had some unbudgeted sales of building and land, which resulted in 2.4 capital revenue. And as far as variances are concerned, in the revenue, I would like to draw your attention to a few items. We have had increased garbage charges, which resulted in 63,000 increase in infringement from election fines of 44,000. And we also had a decrease of 94,000, which was a transfer of capital from recreation budget to Baranduda fields in the capital program. In the expense area, we have a number of interesting items, which is $500,000 towards COVID-19 recovery project, $500,000 for work cover premiums, 80,000 for consultation regarding redevelopment of Wodonga Sports and Leisure Centre, my favorite hangout in Wodonga, 100,000 towards activation of Wodonga Creek area. We paid 100,000 for the a testing site on the Gateway Island, which I myself have used, thank you very much. And we spent 40,000 towards climate adaptation plan. Now, so the additional comment I would please ask to request is a little bit more information on COVID-19 recovery project, a little bit of explanation on increased garbage charges, explanation towards the meaning of infringement from election fines, and two more questions in the capital program, in particular, which land and building sales have brought us 2.4 extra million of revenue, which is recorded as miscellaneous in the capital revenue and expenditure. And another miscellaneous item is down in the capital expenditure. which is 1.1 of just under 1.15 million, which is also recorded as miscellaneous. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Just confirming, did you ask for some extra commentary there from our Director for Finance and Systems, Narelle Klein? Is that what you were after, Councillor Quilty? Yeah. Through you, sorry, Acting CEO. Is that all right? Thanks, Narelle.
Could we go through each query one at a time so I can respond?
Of course, thank you. So I'll go back just in order as it appears on the report. Increased garbage charges of 63,000 in the expense section. Thank you.
So that would be in relation to perhaps slightly higher than budgeted new residences taking up the garbage charges. So this is where we set the garbage charges in the budget at the beginning of the year. We estimate the number of new properties that will be coming on. So they would have been in excess of our budget at that point in time of the year.
Thank you. The second one is increased infringement from election fines, 44,000.
So Fines Victoria collect election infringements which are charged by the state government, and when they've received those collections they remit those to council, given that council pays for the costs of the election. So we don't know what fines we'll receive, so we don't budget for that item. When we receive them we include a budget variation, so that's what that amount is.
Thank you. A COVID-19 recovery project in the expense variance, 500,000.
I might refer that one to our CEO, acting CEO, in relation to, I believe a paper is, did a paper come up? From economic development. Was that funding, 500,000 funding? So this is probably just the, this is the, sorry. Yeah, this is the contingency. So when we brought up the surplus report in the October meeting, there was 500,000 set aside for COVID recovery and resilience, with a report to come up to council as to how that's to be allocated. So I believe that's being worked through. Our CEO might speak to that.
Thank you, Officer Klein. It's $500,000 that Council allocated towards a number of priority projects, and Council approved a number of those. If there's any changes in those, because some of them relied on funding, then we will bring that back to Council. But otherwise we will start to execute, and it's all around planning for some of those key projects.
Thank you very much. Just to reiterate, as I said, thank you very much for the comments. I highlighted a few things. Some of these have been through council, however, at this time and with the quarterly financials in front of us, I thought it is important to go over these things again in a public forum. So thanks for that. Two more, please. Miscellaneous, the capital revenue, 2.4 million, which consists of unbudgeted land and building sales. So the details briefly of those land and buildings that have been sold. Thank you.
So when the state government auctioned Cafe Grove, we received a share of the proceeds of sale of that for the portion of council's land and interest in the building. So we received 600,000 from that auction, and council also auctioned land in Whites Road, Baranduda, that went for $1.8 million. So that's just bringing those into our budget. The funds from Cafe Grove have been received. The Whites Road settlement is due in March.
One more, Councillor Quilty.
Last one, thank you. Miscellaneous capital expenditure, 1.149 million.
Sorry, what page is that on?
Page 6 of 25 of the report, thank you.
On the report with 262 pages.
No, thank you. Sorry. If you look in table 3, capital, revenue and expenditure in the item 8.4 of the agenda has 25 pages, of which I'm looking at page. Oh, I just lost it. Anyway, it's in table 3.
So what was the amount that you were querying?
It was 1.149 million from memory, because I just lost that page.
No, I can see that. So that's not a variation. That's just a consolidation of a number of projects that have been categorised into miscellaneous. From the top of my head, I'm just trying to remember, there might be some sustainability projects under the miscellaneous heading, but there's been no changes through budget variations in this report to that amount. So that's as per the adopted budget.
Thanks, Director Klein. We might move on to Councillor Bennett as the seconder. Thank you, councillors.
Thanks. Quick question as well. With that outdoor activation grant was $500,000, just confirming that was the state government grant around, you know, what it says, activating the outdoors in terms of like practical things around adding street furniture, adding umbrellas so businesses could, you know, expand outward. And I think also it was around streamlining permit processes. Is that, am I on the right page there?
That is correct, Councillor Bennett.
Yeah.
And it was also money that went to a marketing campaign to market local businesses, etc.
Cool. So with that, I might be too soon to tell, but are we doing some sort of an evaluation with that around, you know, what was implemented and what we can learn from that, you know, ongoing for us when we're planning our budget soon, and thinking about COVID recovery around what works and what doesn't work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the economic development team will be doing an evaluation and they will be touching base with the different businesses, but also some anecdotal information in terms of part of that funding also covered the pods that we have put both in Woodland Grove and in Junction as well.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. You didn't have anything further to add in speaking for or against. Thank you. Other councillors? Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I feel that I was very privileged to fill in for you last week with Jacqueline Symes, or Minister Jacqueline Symes, in town to open 2 assets that we put expenditure in, being Kelly Park and being Baranduda. And it is just amazing how our staff and our community, well, particularly our staff, spend our dollars so wisely and take it for and use it to the best of our ability. And Jacqueline was very impressed with that and would love to show that to a lot of other councils in our region or in our state, that how well we spend our money wisely. So thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just thought it was an opportune time to say that with our budget process.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. And you're right, we can deliver 5 projects what others do with 1. Other councillors, before we come back to Councillor Quilty in closing? No. Councillor Quilty, anything to close? You've sort of had a fair bit there at the start, so happy if you don't have anything.
No, nothing further. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Quilty. Therefore, councillors, put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 8.5, councillors, is the Asset Management Policy and Strategy Update. This has been some years since this document was visited by our council. There is a recommendation for you on page, 68 of 262. Would somebody like to move a motion? As per the recommendation, Councillor Watson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Bennett as a seconder. Councillor Watson?
Mr. Mayor, you are correct. It has been probably a little bit late in coming forward for this policy and strategy adoption and revised and updated. So nothing more really to add, but it's just one of those documents we've got to finalise and revise.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett?
Reserve my right, thanks.
Reserving, thank you. Councillors? Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As most people probably already know, I keep banging on about asset management, and I think asset management, next to the appointment of a CEO, is probably the single most important thing that we do as a council on a recurring basis. There's a whole range of things. There's some really, really good bits and pieces in this asset management policy and strategy, and there's an awful lot of fluff in between. And I just think we could make these documents so much more succinct, make them stand with an asset management document like this. They need to stand absolutely on asset management and maintenance and not include things that some of us might regard as superfluous, that are not directly tied to fundamental asset management, but are directed or associated with other policies that may or may not be in conflict or may not be directly relevant. I think when it comes to asset management, we need to be absolutely to the point. All council's assets must be maintained for the life of the asset, and there shouldn't be any fundamental flexibility in there to say, oh, well, we're not going to maintain these assets, this class of asset or these particular assets. We're going to change our priorities and we're going to put it into X, Y, Z. I think we should have an absolutely fixed plan that ensures that our budget amounts get allocated as are necessary to maintain our assets to the standard that we elected councillors set in place. Now, you might argue that we haven't set that in place, but this policy sort of goes around about to doing that. The policy, like, we should be able to make decisions about assets at the end of their ordinary life and decide whether we replace them or whether we do something else and don't replace them and whether the community doesn't need it anymore. I don't see those capabilities written into this strategy. I don't see enough rigour in the way that it may well be in the detail tucked away in a manner, but I don't see the way that we actually set up a system so that we know the state of every asset at any given point in time, and we know what the programmed budgeting needs to be to accommodate the maintenance and management of those assets. To me, I don't think we've got that right yet, and I think this policy is missing on a few of those things. Now, having said all that, asset management is the most critical role of council, and we're custodians of the community common good, and we do have to have an asset policy. I think we can do better, but I'm probably not going to vote against this. I just think we can do a lot better than what we've done here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Other councillors? Councillor Quilty?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with I agree with Councillor Mildren in saying that it is a very important document, and it works together with asset management plan, asset plan that we have, and it is very important to have a good asset plan and a very well written asset management policy. This policy, like all our other policies, aspires to work towards our council vision. There are a few words in the council vision statement. My favorite three are creating the city that's, not three, more than three. Anyway, affordable, offers an abundance of opportunities, so four. Affordable and offers an abundance of opportunities. One thing, one dot point in this policy that is of a slight concern to me is the last one on page 75. It says, provide staff with asset and financial management responsibilities with appropriate training in relevant assets and financial management principles, practices, and processes. Councillors will be briefed to ensure understanding of asset and financial management principles. I feel that there is a slight imbalance of putting a little bit less of control and the action in the hands of the councillors, who are just going to be briefed to ensure understanding as compared to staff who are rightly so, but no less important than councillors, are going to be empowered and trusted with this management. This doesn't mean that I'm going to vote against. I just I would like to draw everyone's attention to this point and hopefully in the future work towards breaching this gap. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Bennett, Councillor Simpendorfer.
I'll be very brief, Mr. Mayor. Well, I thank the staff for this report. When reading it, it's so complex, as the other councillors have said, trying to take into place the policies, the strategies, the plans, the governance, the annual budget, everything that goes with tying all this in is very complex. So a lot of empathy for that work to be done, and it is right. It has to be spot on. But I think some of the evidence is around our city and how our assets are being managed at the moment and what state they're in compared to others around the state. So I applaud the staff for that. I took comments at about page 69. I think the key aspect of both these documents is they set the tone and foundation for the current and future management of Wodonga's infrastructure assets. So if we have feedback and if we have something else to talk about at briefings to improve these documents, then I think we should all share that and hopefully lift or improve documents where they can be. But I was quite satisfied with what's there, particularly with how complex it is. So I thank the staff for that, because it's not something I'd certainly be able to achieve myself. So well done.
Thanks, Councillor Simpendorfer. Councillor Bennett, you'd reserved your right.
Yeah, question. Can someone, maybe Officer Klein, talk about our asset management software that we have to track all our assets and where they're up to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So currently we have a capital project in train to replace our asset management software to ensure that we have all our assets recorded in the one system and to improve the ability to have detailed renewal planning and reporting from that system that we're not currently able to get from the existing processes. That the key project team has gone through a process of seeing demonstrations of a variety of systems that are being used by other councils around the state, and have developed the specifications to go to tender. So that will be going out to tender for our replacement of our asset management system in the coming weeks for evaluation and then selection of an appropriate system. So it is a very important acquisition for council, as councillors have indicated, that it's key to being enabling staff to be able to undertake the asset management processes and reporting in a more efficient, effective and compliant manner than we can currently achieve with the system we've got in place.
Thanks, Director Klein. Councillor Bennett, hopefully that answered your question. Did you wish to speak for or against, or? Yeah.
Yep, just speaking for this. So this document is a suite of council publications of strategic documents we have. So it's informed and informs our key documents like our council plan, like our 10-year financial plan and our service plans, capital plans. And for me too, what's really important is us putting our money where our mouth is. And when you look at our budgets, assets is where the biggest investment we make through our budget. So not only are we have these strategic documents saying that these are our highest priority, but if you look at our budget, certainly that's where we're directing and investing the money in.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson in closing.
Nothing to close, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, councillors, therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 8.6. This is the exciting one, folks. So the tender for Baranduda Field Soccer Pavilion Construction W2598-21. Councillors, it's a pretty comprehensive report that paints the picture on where we're up to, and I'd just like to introduce it by saying, obviously, and I believe it was reported in media as recently as today, some quotes out of this report around we probably are the first council to openly talk about the fact that, these things that we've intended to do for many a year costing more now, just like everybody else who's trying to build a house or landscape a garden or install a pool or whatever it might be. We're going through the exact same sort of process ourselves at the moment. So, Council, there's a pretty good report there in front of you. We know what this means to our city. We know what this means to thousands of users and events in the future, but I will look for someone. The recommendations on page 126. I'll look for someone to move a motion. I'm happy to look at that in regards to the tender. Thank you, Councillor Watson, as per recommendation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. And seconder as per, yep, thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Watson, floor's yours.
Mr. Mayor, this is, like a generational change for our city. It's been over many council terms and will go over future council terms building Baranduda Fields. This is apart from starting our roadways and our drainage, our power systems, things like this. This is actually starting to get some other buildings out there. So constructing a soccer field and many other things. So I look forward to this development. It was probably the vision of in the early days when the Wodonga Development Corporation made Baranduda a growth centre. This is going to help bring more people to our region, more people to our city, and getting people playing sport in our city and people around our region coming to play sport. So it's just a great time for moving forward with Baranduda Fields, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer.
I'll reserve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors. Councillor Mildren, is that a hand? Yep, go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Baranduda Fields is a great project, and I think the things that Councillor Watson said pretty much sum all that up. We've entered into doing this project at a time where there is massive volatility in the development industry of all different sorts, development/construction industry of all different sorts. We have a situation now where costs are increasing very rapidly across the construction and development industry in ways that we haven't seen for a very long time. We're seeing, well, I guess it's a form of inflation in the construction and development industry. We're seeing quite significant increases in materials, increases in actual machinery hire and equipment hire and all the things that go with all that stuff, which is leading to driving up the costs of this project. I mean, we've had this project, as Councillor Watson said, on the drawing board since I would suggest probably 3 councils ago and maybe 4. And it's taken a while to get things happening, and because of the scale and size of it, it's taken a while to get things happening, to get priorities in place, to do it in the manner and the form that we want it done in. And as a consequence, we've costed things at a certain level, and now we have a situation where those costs have quite markedly increased, and all of our planning and all of our activities to get to where we are today were based on costings that were done, well, probably a couple of years ago, if not a little bit longer. And then we get hit with all these increased costs. There's a couple of things that come out of that. One is we have difficulties then with a whole range of government funding arrangements that are put in place because the cost of the project blows out. We can't cut the scope of the project without losing some of that funding. Yet we can't deliver the project without finding extra money somewhere. We, in essence, don't have copious amounts of money sitting in the back pocket ready to dump in to the pot to increase to cover those levels of costs. So as a direct consequence, and with this motion, we've had to go back to the funding sources and I guess to some extent cap in hand and say, please help us out. We're prepared to try and carry our part of the weight, and this resolution shows that we're prepared to do that, but we need to have the support of government to do it. The other thing about this is it makes it absolutely clear without any ambiguity whatsoever that we must very, very tightly manage the Baranduda Fields project from here on to avoid blowouts and things getting out of control. And if we have to do things up front to determine that there's not going to be some unexpected thing that comes out, like perhaps we should be doing soil tests a bit more often, things like that, then we need to be doing it. And this project is one that we have to watch very carefully. It's the single biggest budget amount as a capital project for the time being. And it, as a percentage, if it blows out a percentage, it blows out in big numbers. So we must be a very tight rein on this. And I implore our elected councillors to keep a really tight eye on how this project goes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Other councillors? Councillor Hall?
Yep. Yes, both Councillor Mildren and Councillor Watson have made some, good comments regarding Baranduda Fields. It's, it's a once it's completed, it'll be such a fantastic, asset that this community will have, and we'll be pretty lucky to, we'll stand out above the rest, I think. But the problem with the COVID, and you'll find this across the board in construction with blowouts, it'd be everywhere. I'd say all councils would have issues regarding that. It would probably across the whole state and across the whole country. Shortage of workers, supply shortages, all of this comes pretty hard when you've budgeted for something and it doesn't meet that expectation. The good thing about this is that we have an application in to fund some of the shortfall that was submitted to the federal government's Better Building Regions Fund, round 6, and seeking some extra grants to help with this blowout. We will meet it dollar for dollar, and I'm just hoping that the federal government can see the predicament that we're in for this substantial development, and hope that they will look at us fondly, and we get that grant given to us. So overall, yeah, I support the recommendation in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillors, if allowed, I'll go back to Councillor Simpendorfer, who reserved his right.
It's all been said, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, in closing.
Mr. Mayor, just put the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 8.7, councillors, is the LED streetlight upgrade project. Supply of lights and fittings. There is a recommendation there for you. Councillor Bennett, you happy to move as per recommendation? Thank you. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Simpendorfer, go for it, Councillor Bennett.
So this is all about the supply of 1,632 LED streetlights. So the actual installation of the street lights is a different tender, and that's because we've got no organisation big enough with the capacity to do both. All Victorian and Tasmanian councils are looking at this and, looking to improve energy efficiency. So that'll be a different tender. Some consultants have looked at this work and picked particular street lights that will deliver the largest greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So that'll be, it's estimated at 440 tonnes a year, but also just as importantly, with the shortest payback period. And the payback for this is around, I think it's 4 to 5 years. So good result for us in terms of changing of our streetlights. And certainly I know the Goulburn Murray Climate Alliance has lobbied really hard around this one. And I think in June, when we go to the National Assembly for local governments, we get to, put forward a lot of items about what we should be advocating for going forward. And I think this took a lot of advocating for to get where we are here, but in this report does talk about Department of Transport and how they'll be reimbursing some of this work. But I think this certainly is an area where the state government should step up and invest more resources into. So maybe this could be something that and I'm sure other local governments are in this same situation where they're bearing the brunt of this cost, whereas I think the state government should be putting in some more resources here. So maybe that could be something that we raise at the National Assembly.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Simpendorfer?
No, very well summed up there by Councillor Bennett. So no, I'm happy to support this. I think it's quite obvious in the report what it means and what benefit's going to be to the city. So I'm happy to support it and second it.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that the report that was noted or in the agenda is quite a detailed report. So anyone that is interested should go and have a look. It looks at providing, what have I got here? A payback is said to be between 4.9 years and 6.5 years. So, you know, a lot of these lights have, you know, around a 20-year lifespan. So, you know, in the scheme of things, it's a worthwhile project for council to undertake. Also, you know, going forward, reduction of costs to run. I think it's like anyone that's put in LED lights in their house, they would see some reduction in their electricity bill. It's sort of a bit of a similar thing. There's the cost up front, but eventually the payoffs come to fruition. And that's what we're looking at doing here. So, yes, I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Good one to highlight too, that report, because you're right, it's pretty easy to do the sums. Councillor Bennett in closing? No. Therefore, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 8.8, councillors, is the tender for independent professional advisor. There's a recommendation on page 3 of 19 of the late papers tabled today. Would somebody like to move the motion? Obviously, the committee met on Thursday night to discuss the options in front of us. Would somebody like to move a motion? Councillor Watson, as per recommendation? Yes, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson.
Mr. Mayor, it's one of those things that we've got to take forward. We've spoken at length at a subcommittee to bring this forward to tonight's meeting, and I'll just put forward the motion. And any other councillors want to make comment?
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett.
No, this is a requirement as part of the new Local Government Act. And look, I think the person that we've got is very experienced and very skilled.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillors? No. In closing, Councillor Watson?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Bennett made a very good observation there too, is that we do have a very good person in the appointment and to help and advise us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillors, I therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8.9 also relating to the CEO, the tender for the recruitment agency for our new CEO, councillors. A recommendation on page 11 out of 19 of those tabled papers today. Would somebody like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer, as per recommendation. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpendorfer.
Probably much, as said before, I would have liked to have seen a few more companies, but we end up with the 4. So as per that recommendation and noting that budget variation at 0.3 for us all to consider. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Simpendorfer. Councillor Watson.
I reserve my right, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would have preferred if this had been done with one service provider for both of these issues, and when you review the legislation, there's no restriction on doing that, and indeed some other places are doing it. The issues that say, oh, there'll be a conflict of interest, well, I can't see how that works unless we've got somebody that's just appointing out of their own stable and they're trying to look after their own interests, but that's not normally how this sort of thing works. So I think what we've got in front of us with MacArthur's is a reasonably acceptable fit. The submission that they put forward was quite considerably ahead of the others, in my opinion, and the detail with which they put their assessment criteria, their methodologies, their communication and involvement of elected councillors in the process in some detail, I think is far in front of the others that were put before us. As Councillor Simpfendorfer said, I would have been happy to see more people submitting tenders for this or submitting quotes for it, but we've got what we've got, and it's imperative that we move this on reasonably efficiently and don't dilly-dally around and take too long to do this, not because it becomes difficult to do it over time if we drag it on, but more it just gives some certainty to the staff and the organisation as to the future direction of the place. So from that point of view, Mr Mayor, I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. If no other councillors, I'll go to Councillor Watson. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hall. I've got two. Go, Councillor Hall.
Look, I think Councillor Mildren said it exactly how it is. I think MacArthur's application or submission stood out above the others. I thought it was really informative, and I think that's why all of the councillors basically supported them going forward with the commitment to do our auditing or KPIs for our new CEO. It would have been nice to have more, but I suppose that's a sign of the times at the moment. You know, council has worked as on the committee, has worked hard to get the best appointed company to deal with this, and there's been a bit of work involved in doing that. So, but at the end of the day, I think we've got the best result out of the submitters that submitted their quotes to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hall. Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, I don't support the motion in front of us. I was really impressed with SHK and Transearch. SHK was the person, well, Penny, the lead, was the one who helped us with our previous CEO recruitment, and I couldn't fault her. I thought she was terrific. And Transearch, one of their leads was actually a previous council law. I really liked as well. Transearch had a big focus on, addressing bias and gender equality. So for me, those two completely stood out. So I won't be voting with the motion tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Simpfendorfer, Councillor Watson, you'd reserved your right.
Mr Mayor, I really enjoyed the debate during the time or the discussion we had in committee to come up with the preferred motion for tonight. It's one of those things that, and I respect what the councillors have said previous about, conflict of interest, and this might not occur, and Councillor Mildren said that, but I think when you have two people from the one company, the perception of the community is probably more of a problem than anything. So I'm glad it's quite clear cut that we are different from both the advisory committee and the professional advisor that we'll take on. So more than happy to appoint the MacArthurs in this situation.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Simpfendorfer in closing? No. Therefore, councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried 6-1. Thank you. Councillors, on to item 9, which is reports for noting. 9.1 is the non-compliant delegation. This is the first time the City of Wodonga see this one. Councillors, it's pretty straightforward and was discussed at the time in terms of what the ramifications are. There is a recommendation on page 194 of 262 that obviously be received and noted. Is anyone happy to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Have we got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. Councillor Quilty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just quickly outline what happened here. A member of staff made a mistake by identifying a contract as having a value of 175,000, which would have fallen under the delegation, instead of the actual value of the contract being 391,000. This error resulted in the contract being approved by a staff member under delegation instead of coming to council. This was identified as a very high risk and entered into the non-compliance register and reported to the Audit and Risk Committee meeting at the committee's December meeting. It was then the Audit and Risk Committee who recommended bringing this to the attention of the council. So thanks for that. And the council has also, in the briefing coming up to this meeting, councillors have been reassured that necessary safeguards have been put in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. And councillors have been reassured that relevant staff member has had additional training to support them in not making such mistakes again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Simpendorfer.
No, well summed up there, and I'll support that recommendation that's noted.
Thank you. Councillors? No. Anything in closing, Councillor Quilty? No. Okay, I'll therefore put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Received and noted unanimously. Councillors, as per my email to you all yesterday for item 9.2, I shared with you a motion of which I hope to speak to and also test the floor should I be successful in finding a seconder. At this point in time, I therefore will leave the chair of meeting role, and as Deputy Mayor Graham Simpendorfer is with us, he will assume the role of chair for the next item. Thank you, Councillor Simpendorfer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 9.2, we have the recommendation there. I think it's on page 196. So that's an alternate motion, Mr. Mayor, that you're putting forward to that one at page 196. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And as circulated to councillors, I will read it for the benefit of the public. So I know there's great interest in this because this is item 9.2, Junction Place update. My motion that I'm testing the floor with this evening is one, that the advice from Development Victoria about Junction Place be received and noted, and two, the council resolution from December 13, 2021, quote, that a planning scheme amendment be commenced to reinstate the comprehensive development zone provisions that previously applied pending a comprehensive community consultation process and development of better planning provisions for Junction Place, a close quotation, be rescinded, and three, the acting CEO contact Development Victoria to request a meeting with councillors and relevant officers with regard to their plans for engagement with the council and Wodonga community, their next anticipated steps, and collaboratively establish what planning provision changes, if any, may be required to progress commercial development in Junction Place in line with community expectation. And point four, councillors, you will refer to and recall, point four was a report be prepared for a future council meeting outlining actions required to be undertaken by council to assist in progressing successful development, respectful of historical community input at Junction Place. And Mr. Chair, I'd hopefully get a seconder to speak to this one.
Thank you, Councillor Poulton, for that. We have a seconder in Councillor Bennett, I think I saw first, was it? Councillor Bennett. Thank you.
So you would like me to fire away, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll set my own stopwatch.
Point of order,
and try
Mr.
to
Mayor.
make... Right.
Mr. Acting Mayor, point of order.
Councillor Meldrum, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe we've just had a rescission motion sought, and I refer you to clause 52 of our governance rules, which provides that a councillor may propose a notice of rescission provided it has been signed and dated by at least 3 councillors, the resolution proposed to be rescinded has not been acted on, and the notice of rescission is delivered to the Chief Executive Officer within 24 hours of the resolution having been made, setting out the resolution to be rescinded and the meeting and date and time when it's to be carried out. Mr Mayor, I don't think we've got any of those, and furthermore, I think this motion is in reference to a resolution that's actually been acted upon, even though the second part of the resolution may not have been acted upon. The first part has been acted upon, and Mr Mayor, I say this is a motion that cannot be accepted.
I take it, Councillor Mills, you mean you're addressing that to me and not Councillor Poulton? Because I'll need to seek some advice from the government, so I'll throw on that. So through you, CEO, whether we can have I'm not sure whether we're allowed to get a break on this to seek some advice in relation to section 52.
Yeah, Mr Acting Chair, I recommend that you adjourn for 2 minutes to take advice from the CEO.
Thank you, Mr Scully. I will adjourn for 2 minutes. I'll get some advice from the CEO. Thank you.
And Mr Acting Chair, I suggest that the CEO will give you a call on your mobile.
Thank you. you heard the results, so now you can see it as well. So that, based on that advice, we do uphold the point of order from Councillor Mildren. I'll invite the mover to see whether he wishes to change any of the wording to satisfy the point from Councillor Mildren or not.
Mr. Chair, can I have just 2 seconds just to go back to the perhaps the original motion? Just get my head around that. If you just give me 30 seconds to do so, because I mean ultimately we had a recommendation to receive and note. I guess what my concern there is are we ready for what's going to happen as a city, and can we act in our community's best interest? But I respect the point of order called on me. I'm happy to move as per the recommendation if you'd like me to speak to that, and see if you got a seconder as per recommendation.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I've just got a question.
Councillor Bennett.
In terms of what it takes to rescind a motion, we need to get 3 people in writing to do that. Can we do that right here and now?
Jane, thank you. As the acting chair, I'll seek some advice from our governance officer through you, CEO.
Through you, acting chairperson. The notice of rescission is delivered to the Chief Executive Officer within 24 hours of the resolution having been made, setting out the resolution to be rescinded and the meeting and date when the resolution was carried. So we haven't done that. That hasn't been done, so we can't accept that. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
So I think we're back at the point where, Councillor Poole, you're happy to move as per the recommendation and talk to that as it stands at page 196. Is that a quick understanding of where we're at?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, if I've got a seconder.
Okay, so as per page 196, are we all clear? Recommendation that the advice from Development Victoria about Junction Place be received and noted. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Watson. Sorry, just got in. Councillor Watson seconding. Councillor Poulsen.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Look, councillors, I guess, this is a very fast developing situation that we find ourselves in. Obviously, over the last couple of weeks where Development Victoria have laid their cards clear and announced what they'll be doing with their developers and their development agreement on that site. As a council, we obviously had a resolution back in December to commence some, I guess, changes to the planning provisions. The intent that I had this evening was obviously to try to make sure we put our best foot forward going for the community. But I guess as the default position, until we can get that notice of rescission perhaps administered correctly, I'll happily support the recommendation that's there now to receive and note, and it may need to be a notice of rescission ahead of next month's meeting perhaps to make sure the city can best put their foot forward.
Councillor Poulsen. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Acting Mayor or Deputy Mayor. I'm happy to go forward with the motion put forward, but there's nothing stopping us with a delegation from our city, being the Mayor and the CEO. In my several last council terms, we were in Spring Street a lot, Mr. Mayor. And it's a good opportunity, I think, after tonight's agenda, is that we make an appointment to go down to Spring Street and catch up with them in person.
You, Councillor Watson, open up to the floor now. I assume there'll be some more that want to talk around this. Any raise of hands there? That Councillor Mildren, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I move that we suspend standing orders and have an open and frank conversation about this, because there's a lot to absorb in all of this stuff, and there's many things that we should be throwing around the table, and we should be able to have open conversation and speak more than once if we need to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for suspending standing orders? Councillor Hall, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Sounds like no. We'll suspend standing orders. That's apparent. Is there anything else there that we need CEO to suspend those orders, or we're happy now to talk freely? Okay. Open the floor. Who wishes to speak? Back to you, Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We need to be really, really careful how we go about all this stuff. I hear what our officers have said to us in relation to a planning scheme amendment. I don't agree with it, but I hear what they're saying. I'm disappointed that it's come about in the manner that it has, that we're getting, in effect, a pushback from the staff to say that there's a whole lot of problems with that resolution when it is a methodology that gives the potential for the council to have a position of strength to go forward with this. There's a whole bunch of fundamental things that we have to look at. If we go to Development Victoria and say to them, oh, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? Without us actually taking the abilities that we have. Now, we have some strength in that we are the planning authority and we are the responsible authority. So that gives us some abilities in both strategic planning for the site and the specific statutory planning that happens in relation to the specific developments that might happen on any given piece of land. So we need to be able to go into a conversation, I would urge, with Development Victoria, with the Minister, and I suggest with some representatives of the community that actually stood up and gave us an absolute clear message about all this stuff. I think we should be going and trying to put in a position where we can get a level of authority that's commensurate with the position that we actually hold under the Planning and Environment Act and where we hold as the responsible council for the piece of land that we're talking about. I think it's way overdue that we actually do some things proactively instead of going and asking them what they're going to do and try and react to what they're going to do. I think there's an opportunity here for all of this stuff to be turned around and for things to happen in the manner that our community has told us abundantly clearly what they want to see happen. If we go and just diminish the capability by saying, oh, well, we won't do a planning scheme amendment, then that's a slap in the face to our community. That's us not listening to what they're telling us. I think we are absolutely beholden to carry off and to work forward in seeking to achieve the strategic outcomes that have been told to us. And I know there's been a whole lot of other stuff around the periphery and there's been some harebrained ideas and a whole range of other things, but it's upon us to take it professionally and strategically and take this whole thing forward. And I think this is one of those serious projects that we are the elected representatives of our community and we have to stand up and be counted, and we can't abrogate the responsibility either to our staff or to Development Victoria to go ahead and take this project on, given we've come to where we are. So I think we should be trying to arrange some sort of a position with Development Victoria, with the Minister's office, where we get, the terminology doesn't matter, it's the sentiment here, but where we get some sort of structure in place where there's a management process at the strategic level to deal with what happens on Junction Place, and we have serious seats at the table. The community has a seat at the table, and Development Victoria, who are charged by the state government to run this stuff, have a seat at the table. And I would suggest we need the Minister, his office, to have a seat at the table. And we should be pushing for this as hard as we can. We might not be successful, but that's where we should be going. This is all about us taking our role and our responsibilities to the highest and best level that we can get them to. It's not about winding it back and going cap in hand and asking what they're going to do. And I think, I don't know what the exact motion needs to be, but I think there's an opportunity here to use the positions of strength that we have. They're not all encumbering. They are positions of strength, but there's equal other positions of strength. But we should be using them to get a structure and an outcome that reaches what our community has very clearly told us they want to see. So I'm throwing it out there. I'm happy to talk about and try and workshop some words that we take to Development Victoria and to the Minister and say, this is what we want to achieve. Now, I think we should be workshopping that sort of thing, even here and now, and get a resolution up and get this active. Happy to hear what everybody else has got to say, and a fair chance that I may be in the minority, but I think it's time we just stood up for what our community's told us. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Poulton, you've got your hand up on the Zoom. Need your mic on, sorry.
Sorry, thank you, Acting Chair. And I do wholly respect the words of Councillor Mildren. If I had have had the chance to speak to my motion tonight, which I'm still happy to do at some point in down the track, a lot of his concerns would have been, I guess, resolved. But obviously he's picked me up on a technicality there, and the council I sought to make sure that we're able to have this conversation tonight and actually be proactive as a community rather than responsive has fallen short tonight. So I've got no further to suggest on that, Acting Chair. I look forward to hearing other councillors' comments on this, but you know, I still maintain our support that for now we receive and note the motion.
Councillor Poulton. Anyone else around the floor? Councillor Hall, go ahead.
Look, yeah, I received Councillor Poulton's motion that he put forward, but I understand some of his merit in that, but I didn't agree with the rescission of the planning that we had changed, request to be changed in the December meeting, because I feel like that we need to do these changes so we're not going around in circles. We need that, it's not an open-ended, as I see it, the existing planning on it seems to be allowing a lot of things that the community don't accept, and we need to sort of work on where we go with that. My comments it's from all the feedback Council and Development Victoria have received on Junction Place over the, say, last 8 months or so. It was loudly clear, it was loudly made clear by the community to me that they want to be part of the process and be briefed fully on what is developed in our city centre at Junction Place. Although this is state government-owned land, it is, as I see it, the people's land, and we need to be part of the process going forward. And I think they see that as the same. All the strategic work that was done back in 2013 now looks to be thrown out, and we're back to where we started before then. And this is disappointing. Whilst this is sadly delayed development, which is not what we all wanted. I mean, as a council, we've been on the ball questioning, you know, what's going on with the development there. This delay has now given, it may be seen, could be seen as an opportunity, and give the community and development, now given, sorry, I'm getting a bit mixed in my words. This delay could now be seen as an opportunity for the community, the council and Development Victoria to work together, and a chance to achieve the best outcomes for all. The only way I see forward, and this is establishing some sort of working group, which is Councillor Mildren sort of briefed on, with council, you know, community, Development Victoria as part of a collective group to work together, collect and see where we go and try and nut out the best master plan for this Junction Place. I think we need to go forward with and commence the council resolution, adopt it back in December 13. I think it would allow for a better provision in planning for for what people are looking for. Rescinding this motion just allows for the possibility for more decisions made about Junction Place that are not acceptable to the community, and I believe this isn't what they want or expect from us as their representatives. I think they want to be part of the process. So I just reiterate that again. We need to have the community as part of the process as well as the community, the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Just before anyone else, but I think we're still back at the recommendation that is to, at this stage, is just to note and receive this report. We're not talking about the rescission anymore, from my understanding, are we?
That is correct. Yeah. So they can, they can, oh, I can't hear you, Councillor.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, now, yeah, sorry, yes, I did note that, CEO. Acting CEO, thank you. Just reminding everyone that we're back at the recommendation on page 196, that is the advice from Development Victoria from Junction Place be received and noted, and we did suspend standing orders, so I'm aware of that. Councillor Quilty, you had your hand up first, and then I've note Councillor Bennett and Poulton are still to raise their hands.
Yeah, is it on? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a statement and a question, please. My statement is, it is very true, painfully true, and we need to remember that we don't own the land. So whatever we do, we often have to ask nicely, and we have certain limitations. However, as Councillor Mildren has mentioned, we have, I believe his wording was positions of strength or points of strength. And one of our biggest points of strength is our community. We have a very active and involved community group who have done a lot to advocate, and I thank them for that. I believe we should leverage on these strengths, whichever way we manage. And as has already been mentioned, both in this meeting and in the briefings coming up, try and involve the community members, community representatives as much as it is possible. I like the idea that has been already mentioned to have some sort of a structure or a board where both councillors and community, alongside obviously with DV and the minister, involved. I like to see, again, it needs to be explored, and I don't know how big the possibility of achieving this structure is. But the benefits of that would be that the community and the councillors are regularly kept in the loop of what's going on, rather than being fed the information at the moment whenever people with power choose to do so. And it's an opportunity to provide regular feedback and the opportunity to give us the extra muscle behind our push that the community is so happy and eager to provide. So if we can achieve something that is resembling a structure or a board or an oversight sort of body that involves councillors and community in working towards the result we would like to achieve for our city, I think it would be the best thing we can do. I don't have a suggestion at the moment of how we do that. I suggest we join forces on figuring out how we do that. That was my statement. The question is, I remember that we are not discussing rescinding the previous motion. We are discussing receiving and noting the report. However, for the purposes of, since we're suspending standing orders, and for the purposes of me understanding all the points and all the contributions that come to the table, why did we want to rescind the resolution? What was wrong with the motion in the first place? Why would we want to rescind it? It was thrown out on a technicality. However, I would still like to know the reason why, what was wrong with it? Why did we want to go back on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quilty. Is your question of Councillor Poulton then? Yeah, Councillor Poulton, go.
Thanks, Acting Chair. Look, it's been an awkward spot, really, because if I had been able to successfully put the motion there for me to talk to, we probably would have been all on a learning adventure, perhaps. But that's okay. To answer that question, I'm hearing what everybody's saying. Everybody wants the same thing. What there isn't at the moment is clear direction. That's my concern. That was the motivation to try to put those 4 points in front of us. There was never any intent to not need. And if you had listened and read, councillors, what I sent yesterday, you'd see there was no intent to not put on a planning provision if required. And we knew exactly what it was we're trying to prevent from happening on the site. So, yeah, look, no further question from me. I know Councillor Bennett wanted to speak, acting chair, but I'm happy to move that we've resumed standing orders and hopefully have a seconder, and we just note the report for now. And we pick this up in our briefing conversations and perhaps next month.
Thank you, Councillor Poulton. I will give Councillor Bennett a chance to respond. She hasn't participated in this at the moment. I think going back all the way to probably 35 minutes ago, Councillor Watson was our seconder anyway. So, Councillor Bennett, quickly if you can, please.
I don't know whether this will be quick, but you know, it's really clear that the community did want a reset, and I certainly think when I look at Councillor Poulton's motion that is the intent behind that. I also see him saying, let's get on the front foot with Development Victoria, and also let's ensure that we're working collaboratively with community and with community expectations. So, you know, I certainly see the intent behind, and I really supported Councillor Poulton's motion there. I did want to suggest maybe, you know, we have strategic briefings every single month. We've actually got one on Monday, so maybe, you know, having this discussion on Monday would be good. So again, we're on the front foot, just an option. We have these briefings every month, and there is a lot in this, and there's lots of feedback that we've received. So maybe having that discussion there. I did want to just talk about a little bit about, actually I have a question about the zoning and just how complex that is. Officer Schultz, I'm directing this at you. So with the current zoning in place, that meant that when we had the Dan Murphys come up as an item, that had to come up to us for decision. So say, you know, with the change to the comprehensive development zone, if that was what the zoning was, and if a Dan Murphys wanted to go there, would they have to still apply through us? What's the checks and balances in place with that different zoning?
For you, acting CEO, if that's all right.
Through you, Councillor Simpendorfer. The reason the application was brought before the councillors was because of the number of objections that were received in relation to the submission. It had nothing to do with the zoning. It had to do with the delegations that are set out in the instrument. Any objection, any number of objections, 6 and above, need to come to the council chamber. Councillor Bennett. With regard to any significant difference between the ACZ and the CDZ, I've got staff who are currently assessing those major differences, and they will be before me in the coming weeks. I can't at this point tell you exactly what those major differences are, but irrespective of the zoning, if there were more objections than 6, it would have to come to the council for a decision.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ensure that. Yep. I did have one other thing that I wanted to bring up, which unfortunately I feel like I bring this up every single month. You know, as councillors, we have the responsibility to be acting in good faith and to be acting in the best interests of our community. So Councillor Poulton sent this motion out yesterday, and then again, you know, so we've all clearly read this motion before we get into this meeting, before it hits the cameras come on. So why wasn't this technicality around the rescission of the motion, why is that just brought up now? You know, for me, it feels like we're not acting in the best interest of our community when things every single month don't get raised beforehand. They just get raised when the cameras come on.
That's a question for you, Councillor Milgram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The very first thing I'll say about that, I'm sick of hearing this nonsense, to be frank. The very first thing I'll say about it is I raised this matter in the briefing meeting and I put a conversation out there and thought everybody was listening to me, but it appears they weren't, and specifically talked about these things and specifically talked about the benefits and the opportunities that come from the amendment that had been agreed to by resolution of council. And Officer Schultz pushed back against me and said things that intimated that he didn't agree with it. Fair enough, that's his position. I'm not sure he has a vote round the table, but that was his position. And he's tonight raised a couple of things. The fact that an application comes before council has got nothing to do with whether it's objections or not. It's what the
You've
bloody
not heard
planning
my
scheme
question.
says. No, I'm getting to the point of the whole question.
I want to talk about the rescission.
It was all raised in the briefing by me and disregarded. Last briefing
My
meeting.
issue is your pick up about the rescission. Why did you wait until the cameras came on to bring that up?
Okay.
Why didn't you bring that up before? That's my question.
Okay, here's the very reason why it's happened the way it's happened. If I hadn't have gone about this the way I did strategically, and it was late this afternoon that I realised that there was an opportunity to do this, if I hadn't have done this the way I did strategically, I suspect I would have been voted, or my position on this would have been voted down and everything would have went sailing straight through without this conversation that we're having and without taking full account of everything that our community's been saying to us. I suspect this motion just would have sailed through on the vote and that would have been the end of it. And that simply isn't what I wanted to see happen tonight. I don't mind if at the end of the day, anything that I'm saying doesn't get up, but I want it debated properly and I want the community to know what's being said and done and why it's being said and done. And that's why
Thank
this
you,
is out there.
Councillor Mildren. I think that's answered the question from Councillor Bennett. We'll just finish. We need to finish up here. I think we're going to go back and get a vote to go back into the standing order soon. I think without this
Acting Chair, I haven't had a chance to speak.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware of that, Councillor Watson. So I'll put everyone on notice to be respectful and remember our councillor code of conduct in the same time, please. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Acting Chair, and I'll be very quick and very brief. Last week when I was acting for the Mayor, I was at the opening and Jacqueline's Minister Symes was asked a direct question about Junction Place. And her response, and it's on the record in the media, that they knew about what was happening at Junction Place some time ago. So my comment about what's going on tonight is that a delegation of the Mayor, the Acting CEO and any other officer that needs to be is like in the old-fashioned way we used to do, is go down to Spring Street, talk to Development Victoria and the government, and then come back so they can brief us at a councillor level to get our position on this, because there's definitely movements going down in Melbourne. We need to be in the same room with them just to get some briefing on it. So that's what I wanted to say, Acting Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'll now look to reinstate standing orders. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Bennett, do I have a seconder? Councillor Poulton, thank you. We'll reinstate standing orders. I'll now come back to where we were at 9.2 being the recommendation that the advice from Development Victoria about Junction Place be received and noted. All those in favour? Thank you. We've got Councillor Poulton, Councillor Bennett, Councillor, I can't see hands on the floor there, Councillor Simpfendorfer, Councillor Hall, Watson, Mildren, and I can't see a hand from Councillor Quilty. I may not be able to read the floor there properly, CEO, but I think that's 6-1. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. It's all four was Councillor Poulton, Councillor Bennett, yourself and Councillor Mildren and Councillor Watson. And against Councillor Quilty and Councillor Hall.
Thank you, CEO. So 5 to move that motion. Thank you. And we'll reinstate the chair back to Mr. Mayor Poulton, and you can have your chair back, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpfendorfer. I think I got through about 15 items in the time you got through one, but it's okay. That being said, reports for information, councillors, I'm going to roll through them as per usual, and please, I want to hear an audible shout out just in case I'm not looking up for someone to jump in. So 10.1, the planning report for December 2021. 10.2 is the planning report for 2022, January 2022. 10.3, Councillor Hall.
Just through you, Chair, if it's possible, I just want to ask Officer Schultz just a question about something that was in the report.
10.2 or 10.3?
10.2.
Yeah, go for it.
Application 131/2020, subdivision of land into 7 lots in low density residential zone and bushfire management overlay to remove native vegetation in accordance with clause 52.17. Whereabouts is this exactly on Felton Creek Road?
Councillor Hall, if I may, I'll take that on notice and provide a response to the councillors by lunchtime tomorrow.
Thank you.
10.3, I think we're up to building report for November 2021. 10.4, the building report for December 2021. The building report for January 2022 in at 10.5. The 10.6 competitive services reports for December and January. Thank you. 10.7, the Audit Risk Committee meeting summary of minutes. 10.8 is the Place Names Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Councillor Hall, place name. Did you want to add just something to that one?
Yeah, look, I'd just like to make some comments regarding the Places Name Advisory Committee meeting that we had.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, all right. We meet at, right, okay, I've got here. Let me have a look. This was the first meeting that the Places Name Advisory Committee, it's our first official meeting together. It was a really good first meeting. The new members were all well prepared and researched, which allowed for the meeting to run really smoothly. I love the fact that everyone in our new and new existing members offered something different to the committee. Their background, knowledge, most of which comes from different working or varied interests, was a real benefit for the working committee group. So I thank them all for their input. The new committee members, as chair, I welcome them and asked them to introduce themselves. We gave a brief, there was a brief overview of the functions, duties and responsibilities of the committee. That was provided by Officer Schultz. The DELT provided a presentation dealing with the place naming rules, current and changing legislation, and that was really informative. So I thank them very much for that. It was very informative, and I think a lot of the new committee members got a lot out of that. A concept of research task was introduced, whereby the committee members would propose a range of place names, themes, and then propose to populate these themes in readiness for the place names requests from developers. And so what we want to do is have a big like a data collection of names that have been approved, so it makes it easier for it's smoother running, you know, like developers can come in and there's not as such a big delay in having to come back through the council through the council committee every time. A number of road name proposals were considered for the new residential estate in the city. These were approved by the committee. There was some for New Westmont Village, the Leneva Valley Estate, Wattle Glen, Meridian Rise, the new development there. And the next meeting is scheduled for the 4th of April. So all in all, it was a really good meeting. Just thought I'd update the council on that.
Thanks, Councillor Hall, and it was good to hear from you the day after the meeting to say how energetic it was. Councillor Bennett.
Just quickly, really love that the minutes are in this. It says in the agenda that I'm looking at that the actual minutes are confidential, but I'm just assuming that they will be made public.
I'm seeing a shake from our acting CEO, Councillor Bennett.
Shake, no, shake, yes.
Shake, no, I think.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
The minutes are deemed confidential because it does contain information around deceased persons and their families, as well as people who will be recommended for place naming and those that won't be recommended. So because of the sensitivity of the information, we deem that to be confidential.
Yeah, okay, sure, understand that. There's some really interesting content in here, like Wodonga gangsters and things, so it's very interesting reading. But anyway, I do understand why it can't be public. I did want to acknowledge that this new committee is much more diverse, like in gender and in age, and certainly when you're reading the minutes and what is being discussed, you can certainly see that coming through in what people are putting forward in terms of, women's roles and our First Nations people as well. So love to see it. Great. Looks like the committee is going in a really good direction. Well done.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. 10.9, councillors, is your quarterly council plan progress report. 10.10, the record of councillor meetings, and 10.11 is the decisions register. Item 11, notices of motion, there's none. Petitions, there's nil. Council seal at item 13, there's nil. General business, Councillor Watson, you gave me the pleasure of mentioning earlier today that you'd like to bring up a couple of items.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 3 items, but the first one is the article that led us to the editor today in the Border Mail, and a little bit of criticism or negativity. Can I just say that our Parks and Garden team and our external contractors have been working fantastically well after having, I think, 3 storm events during the January and early February period. So I do understand the concerns from some of our residents that we might have some long grass, but a lot of the stuff they're doing is actually repairing damage is for the safety of our community before they get onto sort of some of the mowing aspects. So I just want to move on to say that they're doing a fantastic job, and it will be cleaned up within time, but they're certainly working on it. The second one was our 2 Cities, 1 Community, but more importantly, the City to City Sunday event. They raised $70,000 for our local hospital, which was fantastic. That money just didn't come from the local community. There were a few people outside the area, and great support that ended up in Junction Square. And my last comment would be to congratulate Peter Decoya, myself and Deb, Officer Mudrow, or Acting CEO Mudrow. We went out to his farewell. It was an amazing lot of speeches. Peter was the instigator when they first moved out there, and he is stepping down, but he's still going to be involved a little bit with the new construction across the road. But what Peter's delivered there, and what Peter and his staff, but Peter spoke about the people and not himself doing all this, and his staff and everyone. So it is such a happy environment out there and a great asset to our city. So I hope that Peter has a nice retirement and stepping down, but I know he's still going to be very active. So that's all I wanted to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Some general business from you, Councillor Quilty, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to use this opportunity to mention the budget consultations that we have been running over the last couple of weeks and will be running over the next few weeks. The council has run a number of budget consultations with the general community at various locations, such as farmers markets, Assumption Gardens, various places of the city, such as Mans Centre. I would like to thank the members of the community who have participated, who have stopped to talk to us, and I would like to thank those who have participated electronically and via social media. And I encourage everyone to still participate and continue to provide their comments at every possible opportunity. We will be running a few sessions with business owners and with representatives of various community groups. So I encourage everyone to involved to participate in that, and I encourage my colleagues on the council to invite those business owners and community group representatives who they would like to see them. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the council staff who have been so dedicated in setting up packing up, standing there for hours on Saturday and Sunday, talking to the community, helping the councillors, recording all the messages and providing this enormous support and coping with this enormous body of work on their weekends. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Quilty. Councillor Bennett?
Yeah, I just wanted to pay tribute to a community member that we lost in the past 2 weeks, Matt Griffiths. I worked with Matt in my role at Gateway Health when he was at Workways. We were working with high school kids, particularly disengaged kids, but also just any kids wanting help with, employment skills. So he was doing really awesome work. I know he has been at Southern Vale for quite a few years, and he had literally the biggest smile I've ever known of anyone. And for me, it would be remiss not to mention, are you okay day is one day a year, but we really need to be asking this literally every single day. It's often, it's the people that you might least expect. It's the people who are the life of the party who might be struggling. So I really want, everyone around the table and everyone listening to, to go and ask people how they are, how are you really? Because you never know who is really struggling and how that conversation could literally save a life, and just how very important that is. So my thoughts, and so many people's thoughts I know, are with Grace and her 2 little kids at this time.
Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Well said. It's a topic that should be front of mind for everybody, particularly given the 2 years that we've gone through and the presence of social media. Is not saying that's the case in this particular gentleman, but definitely the pressures of social media and not switching off. Councillors, I try to encourage, not all of you are constantly replying to emails and things late at night. You need to spend time with those that matter, which is your family. If I can just add to some general business, I just wanted to thank Councillor Watson. I think Councillor Hall might have stepped up as well in my absence. Obviously, we're going through the COVID thing in our household at the moment, but and the officers that rapidly organised and changed and followed up and wondered whether I was right and what I was up to, and made the appropriate phone calls to get somebody there at some pretty milestone events in our community. So thank you to those councillors that have stepped up in my absence. Unfortunately, it looks like my physical absence might be a few more days yet. To be confirmed. Now, on to item 15, councillors, urgent business, which there is none. Question time. Acting CEO, Deb Mudra, I believe you've got a few, and then I've got one to respond to on behalf of the councillors.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got 3 questions here. The first one's from Shirley Keon, and Shirley isn't here tonight. I'll read her answer and then we will provide a written reply. I moved here from East Gippsland Sale, and I would like to put forward a suggestion for a sound shell in Wodonga. I find it very disappointing that there isn't one. With this continuing COVID situation, music outside would be beneficial for the community, as well as providing all our local musicians and visiting musicians a place to play. It is well known that music is beneficial for the mind and health. In my old town of Sale, there was a sound shell which had many music events. Also, a little town out of Shepparton has their own little sound show, again holding music events, just completing their music festival of the weekend just past January 7th, 8th and 9th, 2022, all in this COVID environment. As a lover of music, I find it very missing here. Nothing to go to in the open air. You have beautiful climate here and gardens, utilise it. I have forwarded photographs of sound shells and a range of other ones. I also noticed that there is a perfect park on Huon Creek Road doing nothing. Please consider this seriously for our community, both in Wodonga as well as Albury. Lead the way, Wodonga. Wodonga needs this, outdoor functions and music events. Also think of the tourism this could attract. People travel that love music, and all of our festivals are being cancelled. This is another way to fill a big void. I myself am sick of being home, nothing on, especially outside events. People are looking for outside functions for their own security against this virus. I would appreciate a reply on the outcome of this suggestion as a new ratepayer of Wodonga. Thank you. Cheers, Shirley Keon. Thank you, Shirley. And we will provide you a written response, and that will outline the music festivals that we have coming up outside, particularly in March, plus an outdoor music festival. There's a range of outdoor venues that we use that are capable of doing outside music events and cultural events, including the Gateway Village. And in addition, we do have our Gateway Lakes, which is well known for outdoor music concerts, and Willow Park holds the Carols by Candlelight. So there are a whole range of festivals outside that we have got planned over the next 12 months. The second letter is from Bobby McKibben. In light of the recent outpouring of community sentiment against both revised plan for Junction Place and the planning application for Dan Murphy's at Junction Place, what steps will Wodonga Council take to ensure community values are upheld and that community is included in any future conversations around the Junction Place development? Bobby, again, isn't here tonight, but we will provide her with a written response as a follow-up of some of the discussion that was held here tonight. And taking a lead from that, it will no doubt be discussed further at Councillor's strategic session. And so we will determine what Council's position is, and we will definitely make sure we get back to Bobby McKibben. So thank you, Bobby. We had another question from a Mr. Mark Holland, and I'd like to thank Mark for his correspondence. And again, he's not with us tonight. We received a list of statements from Mr. Holland, and we feel that we need to have further conversations to fully understand what his position is and to determine where council can assist him further. So we will be making contact with Mr. Holland to organise a time that we can sit down with him and go through his list of statements so we can fully understand what his intent is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Acting CEO. A question was to pose to the councillors today, of which I circulated to all councillors and received no feedback, so I'm going to assume they're all happy with the response I've drafted on their behalf. Ms. Dawn George contacted us. There is a perception by the community that council and councillors are not always working together in the best interests of Wodonga. The Zoom council meetings highlight some tension and respect issues with differences in opinion. The meetings are now being viewed with increased public interest. How could these relationships and the chairmanship of the meeting be improved? And how could the community feel more engaged and feel trust in their elected representatives' ability to effectively represent them? I'll provide this response and it will be given in writing as well to Ms. George. Thanks for your question. Rest assured that the council and councillors are always working in the best interests of the city of Wodonga. Hopefully you've seen some of that tonight. Wodonga Council remains nimble to the ever-changing needs and expectations of the community as it grows and will continue to deliver great outcomes for everyone. You don't need to look far to find the result of council's work and investment in the community. The community should be aware that the meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules and each councillor abides by a councillor code of conduct. Both documents remain current and are enforced appropriately. It should be noted at the time of writing this, there are 0 current code of conduct complaints being assessed. It is the understanding of all 7 councillors that whilst we won't always agree, we do respect the point of view each other holds. Your elected representatives will continue to respond to contact made to them individually or collectively, seeking answers to your questions or informing you of where specific items of interest are up to. Should you wish to make further comment on the matters raised, please contact myself, the Mayor. You'll also find the contact details for all 7 councillors on the council website. Thanks, Ms. George. Councillors, that's the end of question time. So item number 17 is confidential business. Recommendation on page 256, closing the meeting to the public. Need a mover, please. Thanks, Councillor Bennett. A seconder. Thanks, Councillor Simpfendorfer. No one wishes to speak against. Therefore, we close the meeting. Thank you. All right, we're good to go. Thank you, councillors. It's been a long session this evening for almost 3 hours, and that concludes this evening's business. So I'll close the meeting for February.
Mr. Mayor,
hang on.
we need to.
What have I missed?
We need to adopt the resolutions.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you, Governance Officer. I've done a move to adopt. Anybody? Thank you. Simperdorfer, second to Councillor Mildren. No one wishes to speak against. They're carried. I will now close the meeting. Thank you very much. We'll see you next month. Please stay safe and well. Thanks very much.